The birth of the twin swords. The greatest weapon a man can wield is his own heart, mind, body, and soul. The weapons of today are merely part of the arsenal. In the world of Dagern, in the times of the ancient past, when the world was young, there were dragons, ancient and majestic beasts of power, magic, and will. They soared through the skies and ruled the lands before them and conversed with immortal beings who inhabit the lands. There were two sects of dragons: the holy dragons, who valued peace, compassion, wisdom, knowledge, justice, mercy, order, life, creation, and freedom, and the chaos dragons, who valued power, corruption, greed, hatred, malice, anger, death, slavery, and destruction. These dragons were constantly fighting one another, the holy dragons hoping to protect all in their charge, while the chaos dragons wanted to conquer, enslave, and consume those the holy dragons protected. The mortal denizens of the world knew this to be the war of the dragon lords, as many dragons on either side sold their lives dearly. They too joined behind these dragons on either side. Some did it for honor, fame, glory, justice, and duty. Others did it for power, knowledge, destruction, and worse. The realms protected by the holy dragons were under the stewardship of their most powerful lord, a powerful dragon named Faldren. He taught many ancient powers to mortals, being the oldest and the first of the holy dragons and their unspoken leader. He too saw mortals under his care to be worthy of protection, and he led his kin into countless battles with their dark brethren to prevent the destruction of all life. Under his teachings, the mortal humans and their fellow neighbors, the elves, dwarves, gnomes, and other races of the light, made kingdoms of their own lands and considered the holy dragons as their allies and respected the power of the holy dragons in both times of peace and in times of war, though Faldren and his kin didn't interfere with the affairs of their wards to allow them to make their own civilizations grow, coming to aid them when the need was great. The realms under the watch of the chaos dragons were under the control of their most powerful leader, Chorvax. Like Faldren, he taught many things to the mortals in his realms, being the oldest and first of the chaos dragons and their unquestioned master. However, this was where things between the two dragon sides changed, for in the realms of the chaos dragons, the beings who live there are forever food, slaves, and worshippers of the chaos dragons. Chorvax saw mortals as nothing more than pawns, food, and puppets, and he and his kin fed their power and malice into their subjects without care, and twisted the hearts of the beings of their lands, who fear them and worship them. Many battles have been fought between the two dragon races and their mortal followers for generations, and it has been a violent and bloody existence. Faldren decided to call a ceasefire and spoke to Chorvax, and both leaders met in the borderlands. What was spoken between the great dragon lords was unknown, but what was certain was that there would be no true compromise, as both leaders knew that. There would be war, even if they would all leave and never interfere with the affairs of the beings under their respective charge. Thus, the dragon lords each spoke to their kin and decided to create weapons that could be used to determine the outcome of each battle. Faldren gathered his kin, and with all of their power, one of his own metallic claws and one of his metal scales, they created a sword of great power. The sword was unlike anything any mortal smith could forge, and was made by the holy dragons to be unmatched by mortal means, save by their own power and that of their dark brethren. Into this sword, they poured portions of their mystic powers, their blood, their beliefs, and more. The sword was forged for nearly 3 to 4 years, and with Faldren's last blessing, the weapon was complete. Chorvax gathered his own kin, and with all of their power, one of his own metallic fangs, and one of his scales, they too created a sword of great power, and it too was unlike anything that any mortal smith could forge, and was made by the chaos dragons to be unequaled by mortal means, save by their own power and that of their holy kin. Into this sword, they poured portions of their own mystic powers, their blood, their beliefs, and more. It took 4 years for the weapon to be completed, and it was so with Chorvax's blessing. Once the weapons were finished, the dragons left the weapons in their most sacred place, and thus they moved aside and allowed their respective mortal followers to seek the weapons out of their own free will. The two swords were wondrous to behold by anyone, and they were soon sought after by many who saw the power of the dragons. But the swords were no mere weapons. They were great reservoirs of magic and power, and were alive. These two swords chose their wielders, and to prove it, those deemed worthy by the swords each bore a mark of the holy and chaos dragons, and the sword would obey only its chosen wielder and master. Those who were able to find the swords, but were not chosen, were unable to wield it in many ways. Those who attempted to wield the holy dragon sword found it to be nearly impossible to lift, as if they were trying to lift a mountain, and those of dark natures and hearts who attempted to wield or touch the holy dragon sword were burned by the mystical wards and enchantments that both chose the wielder and protected the sword from harm. The same could be said for the chaos dragon sword, as it too prevented those who it did not choose to wield it to even lift off the ground. Those who were of good natures and hearts suffered paralyzing pain and fear once they were hit by the wards and enchantments that guarded the sword. After their forging, the swords saw battle in the hands of various warriors from the two realms, and these battles were climactic in scale to the eyes of mortals, and these were known as the Dragon Champion Wars, and each wielder of either sword was graced with the title of Dragon Champion. In time, the swords themselves gained their own names, and while the draconian names for the swords were only spoken by the dragons who made them, the mortals of each realm made names that would long be remembered. The Holy Dragon Sword was known as Holy Talon, and the Chaos Dragon Sword was known as Death Fang. The swords also took in the essences of those who wielded them, learning from their previous wielders, and bestowing the same abilities to those who they chose to wield them later on in life. And it was said that those dragon champions were granted immortality by the swords in a way that they were able to live for many years after the forging of both blades. In one final battle, both Holy Talon and Death Fang were wielded by two powerful mages who fought in the land known as the Dragon's Basin. In the final moments of the 5 days battle of swords and magic, the mages slew one another in a maelstrom of mystical energy that would have been immense, and all magic would have been disrupted. However, in a blinding flash of light, the battle ended, and both mages were seen dead on the ground, and the swords gone. There was panic in both realms, and many petitioned the dragons to locate the wondrous weapons, but the dragons refused and stated that the time of the Holy Talon and the Death Fang in this world had passed. The maelstrom had somehow sent the swords far beyond even their reach, and as such, only a great feat of power could bring the living swords back. The Dragon Lords knew this, and they decided to watch and wait to see through their magic where the swords had indeed landed. It was in a realm too far away for them to open a gateway for the swords' return, but the higher gods deemed that while the swords were no longer there, they would have roles to play in wherever they landed, and soon, new dragon champions will arise, and the battle will once more be fought between the Holy Talon and the Death Fang, and soon, the swords and their wielders would decide the fate of their world in ways that none, not even them, can predict. To be continued. Before you leave, remember this. Some legends don't end. They simply wait for the next chapter. The story you've just witnessed is only the beginning. Hidden secrets, forgotten warriors, and unimaginable battles are still waiting to be uncovered. If you're not subscribed, there's a good chance you'll miss the next piece of this world before everyone else. So join us, subscribe, and become part of this journey. Like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with someone who loves epic fantasy, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, the legend continues.